Welcome to the Dream Power Show, where your dreams turn into reality. Here is your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Welcome to the Dream Power Show. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, the Dream Coach. I've been doing this show for a while now, and a crazy thought hit me. I've never done a segment on yoga. I find that surprising because yoga has become a regular part of my life, and it's the perfect discipline for the times we're living in right now. So I made it my mission to seek out one of the best yoga goddesses I could find, and I'm happy she agreed to be my guest. Giselle Toner has been practicing yoga since she was a child, and for the past 30 years, she's been teaching individuals and groups all about this wonderful spiritual practice. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Giselle.
Debbie, I really am honored that you decided to have me on here. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Well, Giselle, what do you love about yoga?
Wow. Okay, so where do I start? I really do have to say that yoga is one of the main reasons why I'm actually here doing what I do with my own life right now, because when I was younger, my life was very tumultuous. I had a lot of, unsettling things going on as a child. And I think that was one of the main reasons why yoga was something that I was very drawn to. So the thing that I love most about yoga is the fact that it centered and grounded me and actually kept me sane, happy, and connected to something much greater than myself.
I tell you, yoga for me, and for a lot of people, take it because it's stress reducing.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, but it's a good exercise. But it can also help with other health issues. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. I think that there's nothing that yoga does not help, to be honest with you. And of course, I'm not making any medical claims. This is not a medical show, and I'm not a doctor. But I have to say that yoga works on such a deep level. First of all, you're getting your external physical movements. That's number one. But the breathing is so important. Your breathing is involved. If you're doing pranayama, breathing techniques while you're doing your yoga, which I know that name may be a little foreign to most people, but pranayama basically means prana is the life force. Pranayama are the yoga breathing techniques, and there are several of them that are very important. But you're getting your physical moves, you're getting your breathing, your spinal column is getting fresh blood, fresh oxygen. It's getting going forward, backward, side to side, twisting, bending. Your spinal column is your lifeline, and it is getting invigorated. Not only that, but your internal organs are getting also stimulation just from the moves that we do, the holds and the twists and the bends and everything else. So your internal organs are just as important as your external, your physical muscles, your biceps or your external muscles are very important. But if you don't have that internal movement, massaging going on, bringing fresh blood and energy and oxygen, you're not going to be feeling good at all. Okay, so that's just the physical end. Then we have the other part, which is the spiritual end. When you start to practice yoga daily, and when you really start to understand what you're doing, your body, and when you're doing these poses, and some of these poses are very difficult, okay, some of them are a little challenging. What happens is you find that you're focusing on your body and on your moves, and you cannot think of something else out there. Okay, so you have to focus totally on what you're doing and what you're feeling. But besides all that, when you're doing something difficult, you actually learn eventually and hopefully how to have compassion for yourself, to let yourself evolve slowly into some of these more difficult moves. And when you develop compassion for yourself, you take that from your mat out into the world. So that is why yoga is so special. It's not like a physical exercise routine. It is totally different. It is an ancient science, and it's probably over 6,000 years. Some people say 5,000. I think it's over 6,000 years.
One of the things that I really have come to love about it is the fact that you're breathing while you're doing these poses, because you don't realize, when you going along your everyday life, you don't think about breathing. But when you're doing yoga and you're forced to, you actually have to pay attention to your breath. And
Yes.
when you do that, it does take you out of whatever else you're thinking about. You're just concentrating on that. And I love that part.
You know, I know exactly what you mean, because if you can think of some of the standing balance poses, okay? So I'll just throw out tree pose. It's one of the easier ones. I do pretty advanced standing balance poses. When you are doing your balancing poses, you are not thinking of your water bills. You are not thinking of your electric bills. You are not thinking of the quarrel that you had with so-and-so yesterday. You are only thinking of, I need to focus every bit of my attention and energy on my foot because I'm balancing on one foot here. So it's so amazing because you actually have to bring your awareness inward in order to do it properly. And that's something that we'll never do unless we're forced to do it. So in yoga, you have to do it. You will not be able to do anything else if you're not focusing totally on your body and your alignment.
And I have to make a confession here. I really came to yoga very late in my life. For years, I was intimidated by it because I was afraid I'd mess up poses, and if I was in a class, I'd look silly next to people who could also do it perfectly. So what do you say to people like me who might want to try it but are intimidated by that factor?
Debbie, I'm so glad you're saying that, because honestly, there really are a lot of teachers out there, and I'm not knocking anyone at all, but there are a lot of teachers out there that are not really getting what true yoga is. True yoga is not about gymnastics. It is not about going out there and showing everyone, look at how great I look in this pose. Yoga is a deeply personal practice. And the only thing that you need to focus on is yourself. And unfortunately, a lot of people go to these classes and they're seeing people that are doing these amazing things with their body, and they get so upset and worried that they will not go back. If they even ventured in, they will not go back. I always tell people that there is no such thing as the perfect pose. Everyone is going to their perfect level, and it's exactly where you should be. So if you're a total beginner, you never did it before, perfect. You need to do it, but you need to find the right teacher. That is the key here. If you're not feeling comfortable, you need to go somewhere else, because there are places that really cater to every level, whether you're beginner, intermediate, or totally advanced. The right kind of school or the right kind of class, the right kind of teacher will make you feel 100% perfect, exactly the way you are. And that's what you need to look for.
So what should you look for in a teacher?
Well, you do need to find someone who has experience. Now, there are a lot of teachers out there that are they just basically took a weekend course, or even if they took a longer course, they're not really experienced enough working with people. You need to find someone who has experience, that knows the body, that knows how to keep you safe, because you can get injured. You can get injured. If somebody tries to put you in a position that you're not ready for, you're pulling a muscle or something even worse. So you need to find someone with experience and get recommendations if possible. And then the only thing you can do is actually try it. Go there and try it if it is an in-person class. I do a lot of online classes right now, especially with what's going on. So online is a little bit different, but it's still the same. If you have a great teacher, you'll be safe and you'll feel good with it. So you just need to do a little experimenting.
I actually kind of lucked out. I live in a small town, and somebody in the area was doing community yoga at our local library.
Mm-hmm.
And the really nice thing about it is that it really is for everyone. She'll show a pose and say, well, if you can do it at this level, fine. But if you can stretch, or if you could do it a little more, and she'll show how to do the advanced version of the same pose. But
yes,
you don't get punished. There's no punishment. There's no judgment. Whatever you do is right for you. She just stresses it. It's just about being what's right for you.
That is exactly right. Exactly right. You have to be able to demonstrate a pose and say, okay, this is the base level. If you feel good with that, take it to this level. If not, take it even further, but you have to give people those different modifications.
Can you get the same effect from a beginner pose as you can from the more advanced ones?
When most people come to yoga, they're coming to yoga fresh. They've never really done a whole lot before. So what is easy for me is going to be maybe hard for someone else, but there is always a starting point. And if you're at that beginner level, you're getting the same feeling that I'm getting, only in a little bit of a different level, because I have to work really hard to get here. You've got to work really hard to get there. So you're still getting that same feeling, that same benefit, and that same euphoria, because you do get that feeling of euphoria. It does happen.
Speaking of euphoria, one of the aspects of yoga that makes it different, it's not an exercise class, it's a practice, and that involves the practice of meditation. So can you speak a little bit about meditation in yoga?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the thing is, Debbie, that most classes that you'll go to are geared towards the physical end. Very rarely will they actually put in meditation with their physical poses, because a lot of times there are time constraints. But meditation, honestly, that is yoga. Yoga started because the ancient sages wanted to connect to their higher power, and they would go and sit for hours and hours and hours in total silence. And they found that their bodies were a little bit not feeling so good from sitting for so long, so they started to do some stretches and moves. And in addition to that, they wanted to purify their body. But the meditation is true yoga. That is really where it all started. And if you do want to go into a meditation practice, it's very simple, but you just need some basics. If you learn the basics, it's very easy. You'll be meditating like a pro. And I seriously mean that. I know people are very afraid of meditation. They say, oh, I could never do it. You can do it. Believe me, you can.
When you say basics, what do you mean by that?
Okay, so when you learn about meditation, there are certain things that you need to keep in mind. The first thing is that you've got to be able to come to it with an open mind and no judgment. So you cannot go into a meditation saying, oh, I know I'm going to do this wrong. Number one, it's easy, it's gentle, and it's non-judgmental. Those are the three things you need to understand about meditation. The thing that you do need to do, though, there are certain things. You need to make sure that you're in a quiet place. You need to make sure that you're seated upright, because if you're lying down, you're probably going to fall asleep. And you need to be able to just focus on one thing. And there are several different things that you can do. I always teach making sure that you keep it easy and simple. Just focus on your breath. So all you'll do is you'll close your eyes, stay seated upright, start bringing your awareness to your breathing. You don't have to force it, just focus on your breathing. And then, of course, your mind is going to start chattering. It's going to start saying, why am I sitting here? This is uncomfortable. I have better things to do. This isn't for me. When you get those thoughts, acknowledge that they're thoughts. Don't judge them. And just float those thoughts away and bring your awareness right back to your breath. You may do that 20 or 30 times in a minute, because your mind is going to be chattering. But after a while, you'll start to realize that those thoughts will become less and less, and you'll be focusing only on your breath. And pretty soon, you won't even know that you're focusing on your breath. That's when you go to that higher level. That is what we call the gap, the space between the thoughts. When you're in that gap, that is where genius is. That is where creativity lies. That is where you want to be. When you come out of it, you won't even know where you were. You'll say, okay, I wasn't sleeping and I wasn't dreaming, but I don't remember where I was. That's meditation.
How can people find out more about you and your services?
Okay, well, I have two very wonderful websites. One of them is eternityyoga.com. And people can go on there and learn a ton about yoga. There is probably 180 pages. You'll be able to find just anything you want to know about yoga. And you can also stay in touch with me through that page by getting a free ebook. It's called the Yoga 3-Step Blueprint. So they can go onto my website, eternityyoga.com, and click on the link for the free ebook. And that will give me, the ability to be able to stay in touch with you, and you can contact me if you want to. And GiselleToner.com, which is my other site. And that will give you not only yoga, but a lot of the other things that I do, which is life coaching and equine coaching.
We've been speaking with yoga master Giselle Toner about the healing properties of yoga. We'll be right back with our next guest. Have you laughed today? Seriously, have you laughed? It's a lot more important than you think. Laughter affects us in so many ways that don't have anything to do with jokes or even whether you find them funny. To discuss the benefits of laughter, I'm happy to welcome certified laughter yoga professional Shelley Bell. Shelley helps people rediscover their inner joy through her laughter club, presentations to various groups, and team building. She also trains people to become certified laughter yoga leaders through Laughter Yoga International University. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Shelley.
So excited to be back with you. It's so nice to see you.
Oh, I'm excited about this too. I'm going to start off, Shelley, with this. The great poet Lord Byron is quoted as saying, "Always laugh when you can. It's cheap medicine." Is he right?
Absolutely. In fact, the whole point of laughter yoga is not laughing because you've heard a joke, but it's intentional laughter. So we can laugh, just decided to do that. And a lot of good things have happened to a lot of people from a daily laughter practice just because they
Mm-hmm. And speaking of just laughter, one of the first times that I heard about laughter being anything other than just laughing and telling jokes was from the story of the writer Norman Cousins, who wrote about how laughter helped him conquer his illnesses. Do you know that story? Can you tell it?
absolutely. Yeah, well, he was just this regular guy who had a horrible disease, turns out, ankylosing spondylitis, which is an autoimmune degenerative disease of the spine. And there really wasn't a cure for it. And when he was in the hospital, well, being a really smart guy anyway, and he knew that stress, was bad for you. And he thought maybe the opposite might be good. And so he started laughing, you know. Oh, who's the candid camera guy? And all of a sudden, it's just my mind.
Alan Funt.
Anyway, Alan Funt. So Alan Funt brought him movies. This was in the 60s, so no videotapes and all that, but he brought him movies, and he actually found that if he laughed for 10 minutes, he was pain-free for 2 hours. So, so he just kept laughing. And, back then it was before laughter yoga, but that's actually one of the research pieces that Dr. Kacharya looked at when he was researching laughter as the best medicine. So, Norman Cousins actually got better. He doesn't credit the whole thing with laughter, but part of it, as we know now, even getting the oxygen in your system and the stress hormones down and the happy hormones up. And, part of it is attitude. So everything is like all combined, and he actually ended up being better, and I heard that he was one of the first people to actually donate a lot of money to studies for laughter and how it can benefit people.
Yeah.
That's really one of the main reasons why laughter yoga got its start.
And let's talk about laughter yoga and how it got started. Tell us how it started.
Madan Kacharya, who's a medical doctor in India, was doing, he was editing a journal, medical journal, and he wanted to do something on laughter as the best medicine. So he, in addition to some other things, he found the information on Norman Cousins and decided, well, I'm stressed, my patients are stressed, I think we need to laugh, and he didn't really know how to do that, so he decided to start a laughter club. So they were in a park in Mumbai, India. There were only 5 of them to begin with, because everybody thought it was kind of a nutty idea, and they did start out with jokes and humor, but after a few weeks, they realized that really wasn't going to cut it, because not everybody has the same sense of humor, and sometimes they could kind of degenerate into kind of inappropriate things. And he had an acting background. So he thought, okay, come back tomorrow because I'm going to change this up. And he came up with these, the laughter exercises that we do. The yoga part's really related to the breathing and, the Zen-y stuff. And, once you clear out your muck, which you do when you're laughing, because in the moment of laughing, you're really not doing anything else. So it's kind of like a dynamic meditation. In a way, I think it opens up for creativity and all kinds of wonderful things. So So that was in 1995, started out with 5 people, and then, now it's all over the world, thousands and thousands of laughter clubs everywhere, all over the world. And, people doing not just the laughter club, which you got to come to a few times before you moved to New York. But people just work in all kinds of different disciplines, with mental health and physical health, people with problem support groups, corporate, there's a million different ways that people use laughter just to feel better.
And I would think that laughter yoga would be particularly beneficial now during the pandemic, because it does help improve breathing, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It does. It really opens up the lung, because you're getting way more oxygen in your system than you normally would. Because when we're normally just our everyday breathing, when you think about it, it's pretty shallow. So when you're laughing, you can't help, but exhaling a lot so you can get, more fresh oxygen in. So yeah, I even had somebody at one of my trainings who was on oxygen pretty much full time. And she was feeling so much better that she took her oxygen out, and she was able to breathe a lot better.
Aside from helping our breathing, what other benefits do you get from doing laughter yoga?
Oh my God. Well, like I said, the stress hormones go down, happy hormones go up. It opens up the mind, I think, for creativity. But there's so many actual studies that they've done with laughter, where it helps the immune system, and, just people just feel good when they laugh. Everybody knows that. But people don't really know that there are actually scientific things that happen in the body, with the body chemistry and things like that. So it's really way more important and way better. And what a fun way to help yourself. Really.
Right. I think people knew that laughter really did have benefits other than just, making you feel good, they might actually take it more seriously.
Well, exactly. Laughter is serious business. Right.
Can you give me an example of somebody who really found laughter yoga making a difference in their life?
Oh, God, there's so many. But, I'll tell you, there's one woman who she came a lot at the beginning, and then I didn't see her for a number of years, and she started coming back again. And she's been in all my Zoom calls as well. And she said she actually feels better for like 5 days. So when people just tell me it lightens up their day. So that's kind of, I think, the main thing that I hear personally, but from people that have come to my laughter club. But there are a lot of people, out and about and around the world that I've heard really cool stories from, including one gentleman who lives in Australia who actually got a really bad diagnosis, was aplastic anemia or something, and the doctor said, you're gonna, probably die like in a week. And he just started laughing because he didn't know what else to do. He didn't know anything about laughter yoga, and he really got himself cured, and laughter was a big part of it. Credits that. So, he's still around.
Amazing.
It is pretty amazing. Like we're never gonna say, just laugh because it'll cure everything you have. We're never gonna say don't do what your doctor tells you, but adding laughter has to help everything.
It has to be true because studies have shown even just not only with laughter, but just focusing your mind on positive things raises your energy level and raises, the lowers the stress hormones, like you said, and just makes you feel so much better, which has to help. You said boost immunity system.
Even smiling changes your brain chemistry.
Yes.
Just kind of interesting. And one really cool thing about laughter yoga is it doesn't even matter if you think you're fake laughing, because your body doesn't know the difference. And hopefully if you start out fake laughing, that eventually it's going to turn into real laughter. And really the point of laughter yoga is not to laugh so hard you can't stop. That happens sometimes, but that's not even really the point. We laugh kind of in short bursts, and we do some extra breathing exercises, and also when you go to a laughter club, or even with the Zoom, like we're laughing for a kind of an extended period of time, little teeny breaks in between. But, most people, if you're out and about, you'll laugh, ha, 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 but it's really only, a little exchange that you might have with somebody, but the laughter yoga is really, you know, a longer period of time, so more prolonged laughter, and that's what it really.
Okay, so walk me through what would be a typical laughter yoga session. How long is it?
Most people do like for an hour. So we start out, we're, talking about what it is, and then we do maybe, like spend like maybe 20 minutes doing the laughter with little breaks in between for extra breathing, and of course explaining what the next exercise is. And then the second half, we actually do I do some guided meditations, and, so we kind of do that. But people can always go to my website, heartandsoulspace.com, and see a whole session on there that I did for the Hypnosis Motivation Institute a couple of years back.
Mm-hmm.
You can really participate and see what it's really all about.
Yeah. And do you do the same routines every session, or do you mix it up?
Some things that I always do, but they're like just hundreds of laughter yoga exercises. So, yeah, I mix it up. It's never the same exact program because it doesn't need to be.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many fun things to do.
Yeah. Is there anyone who can't participate in a laughter yoga session?
Everybody can participate. Whether, the laughter club that I have at my house, most people are, standing up and moving around and interacting with each other. But, there are people who have come here in wheelchairs, and I've also done work, with Alzheimer's patients and in assisted living. So those people aren't getting up and walking around, but they still can participate. All they can do, and even if they can't even move very much, they still can move a little bit and laugh a little bit and be around the energy.
Let's have some fun here.
Okay.
Can you lead me in some laughter yoga exercises?
Okay, so I always start with Namaste laughter because this started in India, and it's laughter yoga, the yoga being, the breathing and, that we do. So the Namaste pose is like this, or like prayer pose. And what this really is I recognize the divine in you as you recognize that in me. We're all divine, awesome human beings. So we are going to introduce ourselves to each other just with laughter. And Namaste. So on your mark, get set, and let's go. Okay, and very good, very good. Yay. And so one reason why I'd like to start with that, other than what I just said, is that it really shows you that we can laugh just because we've decided to, because Namaste is not inherently funny, but we've just decided to laugh and be playful with a laughter yoga exercise.
And it's all about discovering, the playful side of us.
Right. Because, because a lot of us have kind of lost that. Life is stressful sometimes, well, a lot of times there's things going on, and we get serious as adults. And I think younger and younger, even kids and teenagers have, kind of lost that ability to think on the lighter side.
Mm-hmm. So you have another one.
Okay, how about, I don't know why I'm laughing, and I don't know why you're laughing either. So that goes something like, ha, 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 ha. So part of laughter yoga too, it's like the human condition is what we're dealing with. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Mark, get set, go. It's like, well, we're laughing for the health of it.
How can people find out about you and about laughter yoga?
Well, Dr. Kataria has laughteryoga.org, and you can go on there. Well, right now nobody is doing live laughter sessions, but you can look to see if there's somebody in your area, because the clubs are supposed to be listed right there. A lot of people are doing Zoom sessions. I'm doing Zoom sessions right now. So for the time being, so people, I have a meetup group, which is Laughter Yoga Northridge. So if people want to join there, they can see when I'm doing Zoom, because you can do Zoom from everywhere. You don't have to be close by so that you can come in person. So Debbie, you can even Zoom with us. That would be really cool. It's been a long time since we've laughed together other than our interview here.
Yes. Oh, wonderful. And do you have a website?
I do. It's www.heartandsoulspace, all spelled out, .com.
We've been speaking with Shelley Bell all about laughter yoga. We'll be right back with our next guest. A lot of things have changed for us in these past months. One has been the increase in the amount of people who are remembering their dreams, and that's a good thing. What's bad is that they may forget these dreams as soon as they have them. That's because they don't know how to work with them. I want to help. And that's why I'm talking with a number of dream workers about their methods on how to unlock the meaning of dreams. Today, I'm happy to bring on my guest, Scott Sparrow. Scott is the founder of the Dream Star Institute, the innovator of the 5-star method of dream interpretation, and the author of several books, including Lucid Dreaming, Dawning of the Clear Light. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Scott.
Thank you, Debbie. Glad to be here.
Oh, thank you. Scott, have you found a difference in what you're dreaming about these days?
It's pretty stressful, isn't it, all around? So yes, it seems to be more stressful images and activities.
How did you get interested in dreams?
Well, around the age of 19, I had my first lucid dream. And back then, no one knew what they were. There's nothing written about them. So I was amazed, and I began to study those experiences, and they increased. And that's pretty much how I got into it. I started studying Carl Jung about that time as well, and really, he became my mentor of sorts. So that's how I got into it.
You developed a unique approach to dream work called the 5-star process. Can you go into what those 5 steps are and how a dreamer can use them?
The 5 steps are sharing the dream in the first person present tense, which is something that Fritz Perls pioneered way back. And the second step is called the process narrative or the theme, which is removing all the content from the dream and reducing it to a statement of what's happening. It's very hard to do because it simplifies the dream and people want to jump in and deal with the imagery right off the bat. So the third step, which is probably the heart of the whole method, is looking at the dreamer's response to the dream and how that response affects the dream and vice versa. So it's looking at the dream as a relational or interactive process. Then we get into step 4, which is the dream imagery, where most people want to start. So we slow down the arrival into the imagery analysis. We put these first 3 steps there, and what that does is it really creates a context, a relational context for dealing with the dream imagery. And the last step is how are you going to apply this dream in your waking life, but also dreaming forward, how would you like to change your responses to similar dreams in the future?
This has been called a new era in dream analysis. So how is this method different from other methods?
It's kind of like looking at the world as flat versus round. It doesn't change the world to change your view of the shape of it. So when we change our view of the dream from fixed content, and that's kind of the traditional view. Freud espoused that view that the dream was prepared by the unconscious so that when we get it, it's kind of fixed from the outset. It's a received narrative, and we start working on it immediately. The co-creative paradigm, of which the 5-star method is a systematic approach, is based on the idea that the dream is really indeterminate from the outset. It's an interactive process between the dream ego and the emergent content so that the two interact over real time to create the final product of the dream. So it's not received, it's not fixed. It's a relational experience in which the dreamer plays a significant role in co-creating the outcome.
You said at the beginning, one of the aspects of this is that when you talk about the dream, the languaging is important. You talk about using the present tense,
yes,
things like that. So why is that important?
Well, it creates for the dream worker or the dream group, it creates a shared dream. When you tell a dream or any experience in the past tense, it has a way of keeping it as like a bubble in the dreamer's head. We relate to it as something that's already happened, as something that's private and personal. But when we share it in the present tense, it becomes like a starfish, if you will. The dream now is in the center of the room. It becomes everybody's dream, and then everybody partakes of it, and it becomes personal. So that first step is very important to establish a shared emotional communal experience of the dream. As um, some theorists have said, some dream workers, that we don't work with the dreamer's dream, we work with our dream, the one we hear, the one we internalize, and that begins our work with the dream. So sharing in the present tense increases that likelihood that the dream will become very real and immediate to everyone listening to it.
Do you find that when people have done this kind of work, they see differences in the way they think about the dreams?
Yes, I think so, because it really focuses on dreamer agency, dreamer response, and dreamer capability, but also dreamer deficiency. So when we look at the dreamer and how they're interacting with the dream, it becomes a very much a developmental growth focus. Like, how are you doing with this dream? Not what does it mean, but how are you doing with what's being presented? And that as a therapist, I find that that approach really maps onto the therapeutic conversation, which is how are you dealing with life? What kind of response are you making to this situation? And how do you want to change it? So the dream work, the co-created dream work, maps onto the therapeutic process very beautifully versus the traditional approach, which tends to put the dream in focus without regards to what the dreamer is doing in the dream.
Can you just elaborate on that? Because I'm not entirely clear on that difference.
Okay. So when a person has a dream, typically they ask questions like, what does this image mean? What does this symbol mean? What is this dream telling me to do or telling me about my life? The co-creative process tends to look at what are you doing in relationship to the dream? How did you do? Where did you assume something that may have not been useful, that created a kind of a bad relational outcome? So we look at what the dreamer's doing. We don't overlook that by focusing too much on the content.
I see. Um, and how do you view emotions in terms of this process, or is the emotional aspect a factor?
Very important. First thing we look at is in the dream sharing, the first person present tense sharing, we're looking at the emotional environment of the dream, and as well as most importantly, what is the dissonance? Most dreams involve some degree of emotional dissonance. So the dreamer starts off on her bicycle, traveling through a dark neighborhood at night, trying to get home. So there is this tension in most dreams, some degree of tension. And so we can define what those two aspects are, usually emotionally, like wanting to get secure versus feeling threatened by being vulnerable and exposed, right? So looking at that emotional climate sets the stage for effective dream work.
Can you give me an example of how you would work with a dream using this method?
Okay, so sometimes the simplest dream uh, can reveal more meaning if we look at the dreamer and their attitude than just the content. So I'm working with a man who's estranged from his husband, from his wife. They're preparing to get a divorce. He doesn't really want to get it, but he's really been bad, acting out, had affairs and stuff like that. So he has a dream where he is making love with his wife. It's not usual for him to have dreams like this. And he's very caring. He's very considerate. He slows down. He doesn't want to rush things. He's focused on her need. And that's the dream. Simple as that. Doesn't tell him much except, well, that's not happening, you know. But what I did was I focused on his attitude, the way that he was considerate and focused on her versus his own gratification, which was the historical problem, which caused him to act out and get into all kinds of relationships that caused her to want to end the relationship. So I thought of that as a significant shift for him. And he hadn't seen it because he wasn't really looking at his attitude or his behavior being different than usual. And so it was a therapeutic moment for him, a good moment.
And I'm just thinking, because I My dreams tend to be really short
Yeah,
also. Sometimes they're
right.
just images or little events. And you could just take a single image and use this method to really get to the bottom of it.
As long as the dreamer is engaged in some way and interacting or at least feeling toward the content. Can I share another dream with you? That was
Sure.
really, I had a client many years ago who was seriously depressed, had tried to commit suicide twice. She'd been terribly abused in her life. So in the dream, she's returning home from a long trip, hasn't been home for a long time, and to visit her family, who had been terrible to her in her early life. She arrives at a picnic, and there's nobody there to greet her. There's no food left. There's just a platter on the table with a dead, well, the bones of a fish. All the meat is gone. Everybody's eaten. Left nothing for her. So you can really feel that, right? Uh, for some reason, this very depressed, suicidal woman in the dream takes the tray. She walks down to this pond that's nearby and she lays the tray in the water. And as she does, the fish comes to life, shimmers, colors, and the fish swims away. Now, this was at the very beginning of a multi-year relationship, and I was just blown away. I said, how did you do that? Look what you did. Now, the focus on the dreamer, her response, was not something she expected. But from my approach, that was the pivotal issue in the dream. I mean, the fish being transformed is wonderful, but it only happened, from my perspective, because she found within herself the capacity to take that fish to the water again. So for years, literally, I worked with her for years before she did recover. But for years, we would go back to that dream and I would say, Barbara, how did you do that? It's amazing what you're able to do. Don't forget that. And she never did.
It's very interesting that you just said the point where you would go back to the dream. So when you're working with somebody, you will go back and you find different things in the dream, or is it the person's present activities that determine that?
I use the dream as evidence of whether they are particularly competent or maybe failing in the response. But it becomes a centerpiece for us to continue to look at how that relational event, how their response serves as an exceptional moment in their life. As from a solution focused point of view, some dreams can be seen as an exceptional moment where the dreamer was able to do something, express themselves, confront something in ways that never before they'd done. So we go back to it and continue to ratify that and massage it, if you will, so that that response will get stronger in their life, both in the dream state and the waking state. Sometimes there's mistakes that are made. Sometimes obviously chronic or habitual patterns of relating can be circled as well. And we go back and we look at that. Has anything changed? Are you starting to make more of a more creative response to the situation? So it's not only the celebrations that we continue to look at, but also the moments where they failed in their own opinion.
How did you actually develop this system?
You can imagine it's related to lucid dreaming. When we talk about dreamer response and creativity and alternatives, it's very similar when we to the lucid dream, where we know that when the dreamer becomes aware they're dreaming, they can respond and do all kinds of things. As an early lucid dream researcher and psychotherapist, I found that most of my clients could not become lucid very easily. So the whole idea of, let's use the lucid dream as a platform just fell flat because most of them would just look at me blankly and say, well, how the heck am I going to get there from here? So I began to look at normal dreams and found that most dreamers in every dream have some degree of reflectiveness, choice, responsiveness, and they overlook that. So this approach really goes into those unacknowledged capacities to think, to make choices, and begins to massage those and highlight them so that the individual becomes more aware of their capacity to become more engaged in the dream, more creative. So whether they ever become lucid or not, the ordinary dreamer can at least begin to work on increasing their reflectiveness and the responsiveness to that dream, the future dreams, as well as to life in general.
How do people find out more about you and your services?
Well, I have a website called dreamstarinstitute.com, and I have a lot of papers and some videos and a lot of audio presentations there. You can go there and read them. They're all available. I also have a training program there, a different platform alongside it, which is a way to become certified if you like to in the 5-star method and co-created dream analysis.
We've been speaking with dream worker Scott Sparrow. We'll be right back with our next guest. One thing that's been clear these past few weeks is this: you've had a lot of time to think. And if your thoughts have drifted to worry and fear about the future, I have a radical idea for you. What if instead you focused your thoughts on yourself? Does that sound selfish? Maybe not. There's a way to center attention on yourself that can transform your life to new heights. We're going to discuss how with mindset expert Heather Elliott. Heather is the founder of Mindful Change, whose mission is to help people permanently break free from limiting patterns and into living a life they love. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Heather.
Thank you, Debbie. Glad to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure to have you back with us. Heather, you're quoted as saying, "Your mind is the author of your life. Meet your mind, change your life." What do you mean by this?
I've been studying the mind, Debbie, since the mid-'80s. That kind of speaks to my age a little. But back in the mid-'80s, there wasn't a lot of stuff around that indicated how reality happened. But I learned to use my mind back then to be able to create my world. I used subliminal tapes that I made for myself to change my life. So I just, embedded suggestions about the kind of life I was living, and lo and behold, within about 6 months, I was living it. I learned to use vision boards to identify the details of what I was creating, and I noticed that when I used that technique, it worked. So when I had a chance to study the mind more in depth, which I did in the late 80s and all through the 90s, I found that an even greater link to the mind and our reality, like the small thoughts that we don't think matter. And I founded a technique called the Mindful Change process in mid 2005 that helps people to be able to transform all of the subconscious programming that we have loaded in there throughout our entire lifetime, because it affects every single level of our life. The people we attract, the events that we're attracted to, how people treat us, the abundance or lack thereof. I mean, it's all in here, and it's all been conditioned into our brain, and we just run it like a script, and we don't even know we're doing it.
Why is the default position for most people to focus on the negative parts of their life?
Our entire culture has taught us to go there. If you want to go back to basic conditioning, what I said about the subconscious, it's been conditioned through a lifetime of input from the outside. When you think about the school system and how children are taught, is that they're shown their mistakes and they're asked to correct them. So the bias is automatic to the negative. So that, what's wrong with this? Or how can I be better? So in other words, we don't start with the positive, we start with the negative. And so as a culture, as a world, we actually do that like perpetually. Listen to the evening news. I mean, listen to the pandemic news. They don't start with the good stuff. What they're doing is the world is conditioning us to look for the problems, and our school systems and our media are all, like, if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't lead. Like we're just conditioned to expect to look for what's wrong and be afraid of it.
And that also brings up the point of languaging. The
Yes.
words we use also has an effect that way.
Oh, huge. I mean, without realizing it, Debbie, by the time a child is 7 years old, they have almost all of the conditioning they're going to use for the rest of their life. And it all comes from the language that they've heard used around them and the behaviors of the people, the core people in their lives, like their parents, their grandparents, their siblings, teachers, other students, etc. Like by the age of 7, it's all in here. And all that happens from the age of 7 on is that we project ourselves into what we expect to find. And life just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy based on the beliefs and ways we've been taught to expect the world to show up.
Is this why it's so hard for a lot of people to love themselves?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of a loaded question as well. But when I work with clients on my day-long sessions, we go back into their past to find out what is it that they believe that is interfering with their ability to move forward, or that's creating anxiety in them or making them depressed or whatever. And invariably, it takes them back to incidences that happened early in their life, and how they interpreted it was negatively. So they would have interpreted, mom's busy with the new baby as I'm not special anymore, or I don't matter. And what happens is once they start making decisions like that, then they just keep looking out through that lens, and they keep reinforcing, I don't matter and I'm not special anymore. There's something wrong with me because mom's off paying attention to that new baby. What's so special about the new baby, and where did my specialness go? It's fascinating to watch, but it's like, as a child, we will find the reason to doubt ourselves. And what we do in life is we just pull that doubt right through, and it creates the unworthiness that we feel most of our lifetime and that we battle.
Yeah, these are the stories that we tell ourselves that keep
Absolutely.
repeating. And it is amazing how, that one story, like, let's say, I'm not worthy, it shows up at various points along a person's life
Yeah.
if they haven't dealt with it.
Yeah. And all of us have it. Like, the interesting part, Debbie, there isn't anybody that doesn't have it. It's just a matter to what degree. Because you're right, depending on what happens in your life, it gets triggered, is what I call the word. So let's say a child forms the opinion that they don't matter, or they're not very worthy, they're not deserving. But then there are other parts of their life where they are worthy and deserving, and that's cool. So as long as life is going along and showing them that they're loved and worthy and deserving, it's all good. But then, in teenagehood, they get that rejection, or, as a child, maybe they had difficulty making friendships. And what happens is the moment life becomes hard, it automatically brings up that belief system that says, I don't deserve, or there's something wrong with me, or whatever it is that brings up their unworthiness. So it's kind of like in your own head, you have two stories running. You have the I'm worthy story, and you have the I'm not worthy story. And it just depends on what life circumstances happen to be, which story is going to get triggered, and which one is the bigger story. Do I have more of my life that says that it loves me, or do I have more of my life that says I don't count and I don't matter? And that will determine what your reality feels like to you.
And if the balance is where you have more of the my life doesn't matter, then that's when you get into trouble.
Yes. Or instances, Debbie, I used to work in the arena of separation and divorce. That was where I really developed my skill as this facilitator of change. And it was fascinating because these people would come through these programs, and they would have felt okay. When they were married, they felt okay. But usually the people that came into our programs to rebuild their lives post-divorce, they were the ones that got dumped, not the ones that did the dumping. So we called them the dumpee. And so because they were the dumpee, all of their unworthiness was up, all of it. Like they walked into our session and they felt horrid because, somebody had left them, and oftentimes there was another person involved in it and that kind of thing. So it just depends on life circumstances. So for them, they're going to go through a period where they have to rebuild and rebuild and rebuild to build a life that starts to affirm them again. And they start to come out of that I'm worthless kind of state into a more worthy state. Now, when you think about what life is going through right now, and you think about these principles, what happens is, we're going through this, quote, pandemic. And, there's job losses, and there's health issues, and there's all sorts of fear and anxiety and everything else. And you'll notice that the TV and the newspapers, they lead with that stuff. I mean, They are not leading with the uplifting stories. They are leading with the fearful ones. And they're interviewing people that give you fearful thoughts about your future, and they forecast, oh my goodness, we could be here till next year, and all this kind of stuff. And so it's like, think of it like a divorce, is that we are going through this really anxiety producing series of events. And if we ourselves lack confidence, or if we ourselves have anxiety or fear in us, this instability in the world just brings it right up. And it's going to put it right in your face. And the world, like the people in the world, are going crazy. So it's easy to pick up on the vibrations around you and start to reflect them outwards, and get caught in that spiral of, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, what's going to happen to me?
One of the ways to get rid of this anxiety and fear is through your program, Mindful Change. And you have 5 core beliefs that sort of make up the program. First one is life is perfect.
Yeah. When you look at life and you don't judge it, Debbie, you can't be anxious about it. Now that is a real trick, because right now, I mean, what they're telling us life is, and I'll say it like that, what the news media is telling us life is seems dreadfully scary. So how is it that you see it as perfect? And it requires an act of faith to know that we have way more control than what we're being taught that we do. And that the second thing is that I know that as individuals, we're in charge of each of our own personal realities. So as much as other people are scared and getting sick and having problems, you can be in your own little bubble where you're in charge of your life. And as long as you don't lose focus on your abundance and your strength and your confidence, you can keep your world in a state that is relatively perfect for you, even in the face of all sorts of upheaval around you by other people.
Somebody comes to you now and they're saying, I'm just totally stressed out about money. I feel like I'm never going to make any more money again, given everything that's going on. How can you help them?
Well, one of the things that I do is I'm a big believer in the meditation stuff. Dr. Joe Dispenza does a lot of work on the meditation stuff. And it's all about moving your frequency out of that fear-based state. Like, in order to help anybody right now, they have to be able to move out of their fearful pictures that they're making in their head, and they have to really fight against them. So whatever technique is going to work for them, I would teach them. So meditation is one way where you can come up out of the frequency of fear and into a meditative state that is way more optimistic and abundant than the one that you're in normal consciousness. The second thing I would say is stop watching the television. Stop. My teacher that I had for many years said, people would go a lot further if they learned to use their imagination to dream the dream of the life they want to live. And that's my message to business people, anybody through these times, is that rather than turning on the TV and looking at all the stats of who's died and how many more cases there are and how bad the economies are and everything else, turn it off and ask yourself the question, if I didn't know anything about what was happening in my world right now, what is it that I want to create for myself going forward? Who do I want to be? Where do I want to go? What do I want to experience? What do I want my business to be? What do I want my life to be? I mean, and spend time dreaming it.
How can people find out more about you and your work?
I have a website. It's www.mindfulchange.com. And on that website is my phone number. And my email address is heather@mindfulchange.com.
We've been speaking with Heather Elliott about mindful change. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. Until next time, this is Debbie Spector-Weissman saying, sweet dreams, everybody.
Bye.